one of the things I thought we should do, and I thought would be a good thing, is we just go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'll start off with myself, and then we'll move towards your computer says General Barnes. Your computer says Robert, but we're going to assume that that's not you. But of course, I'm Dr. Anthony Sean Neal, and I'll say more about my job in the Navy and things of that nature after everyone else introduces themselves. So we'll begin with you, General, and we'll go from there. We'll do Colonel Barnes, and then after that, we'll do Mr. Gaines.
Okay. I was born in Waynesboro, Mississippi, and after graduation, I went to college, graduated from college, and it was after college that I entered the military. I entered the Army Reserve. The closest I got to the military when I was in college was attending the ROTC ball with a really good friend of mine who did not, well, he had a date. His date stood him up, so I was a good friend. He said, "You got a dress. Can you go to this ball with me?" And I said, "Sure." And we've kind of lost touch over the years. But in graduate school, after I graduated from USM, I was really broke and I needed some money. So I joined the Army Reserve. I thought it would only be for just a few years, but little did I know that I would stay in the Army Reserve for 32 years. I went in as a PFC, and I decided that if I was going to stay in, that I needed to be all I could be, because that was the theme at the time. Be all you could be. And so I applied for a direct commission, and lo and behold, I got a direct commission. So that started a time with me of tremendous challenges, of setting goals, not meeting the goals the first, second, and sometimes even the third time in my career. But I commanded at the company level, battalion level. I had 2 06 commands, and I was retired as deputy commander at HRC at Fort Knox, Kentucky, which the deputy commander at HRC at the time was always an Army Reserve GO. And that gave me some great experience. But throughout my military career, wow, I had a lot of challenges. I had a lot of good things to happen, and there was a lot of disappointments in my career. I can say that the biggest challenge that I ever had was being the only person of color in the room when we were in leadership meetings, but the only female in the room a lot of times, and the biggest, but of those challenges, not having a mentor, that is someone that was female and African American when I was coming up through the ranks, that I could model my career on. And so I compensated. I looked up bios of other female officers that were in my career field, and I just modeled myself after them. I have enjoyed being in the military. It has a lot of benefits. I did not see it at the time, but after I passed that 20-year mark, I decided to stay in a little longer. So the military has been overall good for me. The challenges concerning my gender and my race were not as stark in the military as they were in my civilian job. For many reasons, because the military, you knew if you were the same rank as someone else, that you would get the same pay, basically. That's not always the case in the civilian life. So I am just here to answer any questions that anyone might have, and that's my story.
What year did you retire?
2014. I retired in 2014.
Ah, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, Colonel Barnes.
Good morning, everybody. name is Robert Leonard Barnes Jr. My mom always told me to say Leonard and always Jr. I was born in Brookhaven, Mississippi. I attended Eva H. Harris High School. It's an all-black high school in those days, and it's a long story how I got to Mississippi State, but I'll make a short version of it. One summer, my 4-H county agent took me to Mississippi State for a 4-H club event. And once I got on the campus of Mississippi State, I said, "This is the place I gotta be." So through a lot of prayers and my mom and my dad, and also some money as well, I started Mississippi State in 1968. I graduated in 1972. And most people don't know. Most people of a certain age, younger age, didn't know that the first 2 years, I don't know when it started, but the first 2 years that you're at Mississippi State, ROTC was mandatory for all males. Now it ended in 1970. And in 1970, and this is again, this goes back to things have changed a lot. There was the lottery, the military lottery. Before that was the draft. Of course, you had deferments and all those type of things, and it was kind of unfair and who was going to get drafted and who was going to have a deferment. So when they had the lottery in 1970, it's kind of like the lottery for the money. My draft number, my lottery number was 6. So I knew for sure that when I graduated from college, I was going to go to Vietnam. Vietnam was still hot and heavy at that particular time. So I stayed in ROTC, and it turns out that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I also happened to be the first African American to get a commission from ROTC at Mississippi State. And so after I graduated, I went to Army officers basic course at Fort Eustis, Virginia, for about 3 months. And then from there, I went to Germany. I was in Germany for about 3 years, actually 3.5 years. And I came back to Germany, was stationed at Fort Eustis for a period of time. And then I said, okay, this is enough. But a friend of mine told me about the Army Reserve. So I said, okay, I'll stay on the Army Reserve, stay in the Army Reserve. I had been on active duty for about 5 years. And through the Army Reserve, I had a military career and a civilian career. And I was on active duty for quite a bit. But towards the end of my career, it was 9/11. Of course, the whole world changed quite a bit after 9/11. And my unit was in the Middle East, in Kuwait, about 3 months later. September the 11th, I was a civilian and just kind of doing my Army Reserve thing. December the 11th, I was in Kuwait, just that quick. And I spent the rest of my time on active duty, either in Kuwait or in the States. And I retired from the Army in 2004. And that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Mr. Gaines?
All right, so my name is Patrick Prickling. I am from Tupelo, Mississippi. I have been attending Mississippi State University going on around 6 years, probably equally the same amount of time I've been in the military. I've been in the military in the United States Air National Guard for about 6.5 years. I am majoring in Bachelor of Science of Interdisciplinary Studies. My three fields of study are marketing, communication, and kinesiology. Let's see. Also, in the military, I'm an aircraft mechanic. I work on the KC-135R shuttle tanker, the air refueler. Yeah. I don't know what else to say, but that's me. That's me.
How did you come about getting in the military?
So I have a lot of family in the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, and I've always wanted to fly planes. I'm a pilot. It's something I've been working towards. and I decided to join the Guard because my mother, she was in the Guard at Meridian and Keyfield, the 186 Curriculum Wing. And I've been growing up on that base because we originally lived in Philadelphia, Mississippi. And I decided to join my senior year of high school. And ever since then, I've been at it, still working towards my dreams. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Wow. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. I'll say just a bit about myself, and then I'll come back to you guys. So I guess I'm the only one on the panel that wasn't born in Mississippi. I was actually born in Tampa, Florida, on MacDill Air Force Base. My dad was in the Air Force. He hadn't, at that point, was 69. Had he gone overseas? I don't think he had gone overseas yet. But anyway, so I was born in Tampa, Florida. I spent the first 3 or 4 years of my life on military bases. In fact, one of the reasons why I probably hate the snow now, because the last base that we lived on, or we lived right off base, was in Topeka, Kansas. It was an Air Force base there. And I just remember it snowing all the time, and I remember hating cold weather. So my dad decided to move back to, he got out of the military. He was going to do 20 years in the military, but he decided to get out of the military and to come back to Mississippi. So I grew up in Vicksburg, Mississippi. When like I said, my dad was in the military. Both my grandfathers were in the one of my grandfathers was in the Army. His job was to go and get the dead in World War II and bury them, post-sulfur and all this kind of stuff and whatever. But anyway, my other grandfather was in the Marines, and his career really intrigued me. So I was really excited about the stories that they talked about traveling around the world. I had an uncle who was an airborne ranger. I used to wear his patch on my shirt when I went to school. I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. So I was around military people a lot, and I kind of thought it was like the masculine, in some ways, which might even be a negative thing, but I thought it was like the masculine thing to do, that everybody went to the military if you wanted to show a certain type of manhood. So I'm getting ready to mute one of them. So can you hear me? Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
We hear us, a little feedback.
That was
We can't see you. We can't hear you, Dr. Neal.
now. Can you hear me now? Okay. So, and decided that that I would go into the military, and I wanted to join the Marines like my grandfather. I think I told Colonel Barnes this story the other day. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Everybody was so quiet, I wasn't sure. Okay, so what I did was I went to the Marines to join the Marines, and I said I didn't have to kill anybody. And they thought that was the most ridiculous thing that they'd ever heard. So they sent me down to the Navy, and I actually joined either the Marines or the Navy because I liked the uniform. No knock against the Army, but I wanted to wear that uniform. It had a bit of pizzazz, the dress white. And the I was in the Navy, and actually I went in as a transferred to Morehouse College, and I went in at 3. I knew I wanted to be an officer, in religion, minoring in philosophy. And so at that time, I was an art, which is the religious program officer. So P3, and I got in that chapter court. Went to seminary, while I was in the chaplain, and I stayed in the military 11 years. I would have stayed in longer, but I had irregular heartbeat. And, you know, when I was in the military, anything wrong, you gotta go, right? So I could never get an AG. And first went in, but because they needed people. But after 11 years, it was time for me to go. So I got out, and that's kind of the end of my story. I left the military. I think it was in 2009. I got out of the reserve in 2009. I never had any active duty other than you know, my 2 weeks a year, things of that nature. And the most I did, you know, I told people I was in the Navy, but as far as on a ship, whenever I was on a ship, we just went out from Mayport in Florida and turned around and came back. So that's my extent to riding on a ship at the time I was on planes. So I thought would be interesting. You general, put your rank in context. People have no idea when we say someone is a general, they don't really understand the equivalent would be civilian status. So could you say something about what you've been about how many people you would be over? How many people, when you say different commands, could you say something about how many people would be in a command? Kind of put that in context. I mean, I know what it means, but the average person, I don't think knows how many people, just how many people are under the command of a brigadier general.
Okay, let me start at the company level. At the company level, that would be 1 to 200 people, depending on the size of the company. Then you get to battalion level, and the battalion level will generally consist of 4 companies, sometimes less, sometimes more, but it has to be at least 2 companies. When you get to group level, you are talking about 3 battalions. So if a battalion has 4 companies and each company has 200 people, that's about 800 people. When you get to the headquarters at Human Resources Command, when I left HRC, there were 3,000 people. And I've got a picture of me and the commander and the command sergeant major standing outside with most of the people. Now, most of them were not, and that's the fallacy that a lot of people don't understand. Everybody in the military that works for the Army unit, they're not military. You have sometimes up to 1/3 of the force that are civilian.
And also, could you say something about, and like I say, you know, we all understand this and we take this for granted, but could you say something about time and rank for promotions? How long does it take a person? Let's assume you start out as the first officer, you were a 01, right? So from a 01, what is the amount of time that it would take a person to go from being 01, assuming they promoted every time they went up for promotion, which we know doesn't happen every time, right? But from 01 to your last rank would have been 07, 08.
It was 07.
07. So how long in rank does it go from 01 to 07?
Okay, so you start out in the Army, the 01 is a second lieutenant. They call them butterbars. And generally with butterbars, most of the sergeants, the E6s and above, think that butterbars don't know anything. So when they get to a unit, they play games with them sometimes. But anyway, for a butterbar to get to first lieutenant, generally that takes about 3 years, sometimes 4 years. And then from lieutenant, then you go to captain. And that's probably another 4 years, sometimes it's 7 years. It just depends, because what the Army does, it adjusts the time and grade to fit how many people they need at a specific rank. So if a war is going on and they don't have enough captains, for instance, and they have a lot of first lieutenants that can be easily promoted, that could, they need a little bit more seasoning, maybe not, they will shorten the time and grade. So it just depends. But the longest time and grade I had was between captain and major, if I remember correctly. That was a long period of time. And then from major, it averages out to be about 3 to 4 years. It could be as many as 7 years. Now, when you get to the rank of colonel, if generally when you get to the rank of colonel, they're thinning people out so that they can have people come in behind them, and they don't let you stay past 28 years. So if you're a colonel and you have been commissioned for over 28 years, they would gently ask you to leave or retire you. And some people choose to leave, and some people try to stick around as long as they can to see if they make 07, because 06 is colonel. Now, except for wartime. During war times, they keep people on a lot longer. Now, this is just for this is not the nurses corps, this is not the JAG corps, and it's not the doctors, because there are doctors with certain specialties that they will let stay on past 70 years. It's very rare to see officers, unless you're a general officer that's over 60 years old, that's still in the service, unless they're medical corps. When you get to the point of being a brigadier general, which is what I was, and that is an 07, you have 5 years at brigadier general. If you don't make 08 within 5 years, you are asked to retire.
Awesome. And also chaplains will be in there for a long period of time.
Okay.
Yeah. I knew some Catholic chaplains that planned on dying in the military. So yeah. So Colonel Barnes, could you say something about not promoting? Right, and we know you were first to promote every time you went up for but could you say something about some of the reasons why you don't promote when people do not promote, and how that promotion process works, especially at the officer level? I assume that they do it very similar across the board. They sit in a room and the screen comes up or whatever, but could you say something about that?
Yeah, I will. Before I do that, Dr. Neal, I don't know whether you can see him on your screen, but Colonel Col Sanders is on.
Okay.
He's back.
Yes, I see him.
Okay. All right. I'll answer your question. I just want to make sure you saw it, but I know sometimes these things you can't see them. But at any rate, yeah, I was one of those. I was passed, and they call it passed over. It sounds like it's such a terrible thing. It's really not that bad. It's not a kiss of death, because hey, all of a sudden I made colonel after being passed over for colonel the first go round. But it's based on performance, and that's one of the things. Now, is it completely based on performance? How do you define performance? What is good performance, and all of that? In a civilian life, it is much more subjective. The Army is a little bit more objective, but it's still based on one thing. Well, maybe two, one and a half. One thing is officially it's your officer efficiency rating.
Okay.
The thing about, and here's the half. Here's a human being with biases and prejudices and all of those things that go along with being a human being. That person writes your efficiency rating. So if you have a good boss and he likes you, and you're doing at least, if you haven't killed anybody, yeah, you'll get a good officer efficiency rating. There's sort of a balance to that. In most cases, now there's a few exceptions, but in most cases you have a rater, which is your boss, your direct supervisor, and you have a senior rater. That's your boss's boss. So sometimes your boss and your boss's boss may not see you in the exact same way. Most of the times they do, sometimes they don't. But it's based on merit. At least that's the technical term, and they have changed it. It used to be, as far as getting promotions, it was based on a point system, and it was totally inflated. There was not an officer that I was around that did not walk on water. I mean, they were just super duper people. So the Army finally says, this is crazy." So they balanced it out so that as a raider or a senior raider, there were only so many people you could put in what we call the top block. And it was
Right.
you just couldn't do that. So there was a pyramid. You could put some in the top block, and then some had to go in the bottom block. So it made it a little less inflated. But the other thing that's about getting passed over or anything else, even in the civilian life, is that there is, in a lot of cases, not all cases, there is life after not getting everything you want. It teaches you persistence. It teaches you the fact that, yeah, I didn't make it this time, but I'll make it the next time. The other thing it teaches you is that a lot of times, the efficiency of your unit is not always who you are as an individual. It's how your unit performs. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I have learned, that I could take from military and civilian life, is that if you want to be a success, you have to make your people, or put your people in a position so that they are successful.
Right.
The more you do that and the more you help them, they will help you. And also the other thing too, and this is something that you've heard a lot, that you hear a lot in the military, you have to make your boss look good. But if you make your boss look good, your boss will make you look good, which means that he or she will give you a good efficiency rating. Now, is that 100% true? No. We know that. But in theory, that's the way it works. And it works at least to a degree better than it does in the civilian sector, because the military, there's no profit motive. I mean, we don't make any money. In fact, we just spend money. That's all we do. But on the civilian side, yeah, if you make your boss look good, if your numbers are up, your profits and this or whatever the measurements are, that's that is very objective. But because of the way our American society is, there's a lot of biases that goes into promotions of people from within the civilian sector. That's a long answer to a short question.
No, wonderful information. Because also, I will add to that. I know sometimes even commands that you chose, because for me, being in the reserve, we got a chance to choose certain places we were going to go. And a friend of mine said, well, had I chosen more of the green side, we have the green side and the blue side, the Marines and the Navy. Had I chose more of the green side, I could have stayed in longer. But because I chose mostly blue side, well, they were easy. It was easier to say, hey, it's time to go. All right. And Colonel Sanders, I imagine you get that the people are, wow, you're Colonel Sanders, right? So I had to say that, right? It's right there, right? But could you tell us a bit about
The real Colonel
yourself?
Sanders.
Right.
Can you all
But you
hear
were
me?
not. Yes, you were not
You
a
all hear
part
me?
of the
Okay, good.
conversation when we
I'll turn the phone off
when
then.
we said. All right. When we said a little bit about our background, you were not a part of the conversation. Could you say something about?
Oh yeah, I was on. You probably may not have been able to see me. I was on. I've been on the whole time.
Oh, okay. I didn't see you. Okay, so
Yeah.
you were in the
Okay.
Army, right?
Right. Our Army Reserves, the National Guard Reserve. A little bit about Maine, Mississippi State, in the military. I'm from New Albany, Mississippi, and I attended Mississippi. I went to Northeast Community College first, then I attended Mississippi State. And ironically enough, while I was at Mississippi State, there was some things going on, joining militaries and things. So I said to some of the guys in the dorm that I was an RA over, I said, listen, if I want butt beat, I'll go to the military instead of. Anyway, not knowing that within a year or so of me saying that, that's actually what happened. So I graduated from Mississippi State, and I was teaching high school. And my roommate actually had went down to the recruiter's office, and he received some stuff and threw it on the table, and he wasn't interested in the Army. And I was teaching school, so I wanted to have something to do for the summer. That was one reason I wanted to join. I wanted to make money and probably network with some people. And one of the third and probably a good reason why I went to the military was that my mom had passed after the first year I graduated, spring of '84. And I did not want to sit around all summer thinking about her death and all that good stuff. So I started looking at some stuff on the table from the recruiter, and I said, well, I'll just join the Army or the National Guard, and that way I can teach schools and stay in the military at the same time. So those are some of the reasons why I joined the military, the National Guard, was because of the money, the network, and because of my mom. But so I joined, and I was like the general there. I was a PFC when I first started because I had an education and all, and went through basic training. Like I said, ironically enough, some of the guys that told me asked about OCS when I went to station to get signed up to go to basic training, and the unit clerk that says, "You haven't even been to basic training yet. You can't be asking about no officers. You got to go to training." It's the first. And me not knowing all that much about the military, so after I went to basic training, I said, "Well, I'm going to do my 6-year obligation and get out of here. That's all I'm going to do." And lo and behold, after I got my advanced training out of the way, they asked me, "Do you want to go to OCS? Because this unit needs to send somebody to OCS." And I said, "I don't know. I'll think about it." So when I went, and like the general and the colonel, there was a lot of, and probably you and anybody else been in the military, there was a lot of obstacles against me going to OCS because I had a personnel background, AG background, because I was in public affairs, and that's what I did 25 years in public affairs. And I didn't have a combat background or field background, and it was hard for me to get some of the training there. So a lot of people thought I was not going to make it because OCS is basically combat training, field training, and maneuvers and things like that. So God blessed me to pass to make OCS. So got out of the way. I was with the National Guard, and they finally, my last station in the National Guard was the Garrison Public Affairs Officer at Camp Shelby. And while I was at Camp Shelby, I had made all my military schools and things like that. So I was eligible. I made it to the rank of major at Camp Shelby when I first got there, and I was eligible for 05 just because I went active duty down on Title 10. We were active duty, and so my friend that went to OCS, he worked at Force Command over in Atlanta, and he called me and said, "Hey, listen, you're on the 05 list. You don't have to have 05 slot if you're active duty. Title 10, you don't have a slot to just a second. Okay. You don't have to have 05 slot to get promoted if you're in the Guard and you're on active duty, Title 10. So that was a little rift there because a lot of the whites and a few blacks did not want me to take their promotion to 05. And matter of fact, the personnel, RF1, the personnel officer was a black female, and they argued against me, saying, "I don't know why you think these white boys let you take this promotion to 05, a lieutenant colonel, and everything. But if you," and I felt like a broke neck dog leaving out her office. I felt so bad, and I felt like the whole world was on me. But the last thing she said was, "If you want to, you can use against them." Right now, I work for these white boys for 20 years in that car, and they're not gonna let you get an 05 position while you're on Title 10. So I did, and after being at Camp Shelby for 5 years, I transferred in to the reserves, and that was one of the best moves that God blessed me to make. Transferred into the reserve unit, engineering unit over in Vicksburg, the 412th Reserve, as chief of public affairs, and that's a theater command. So that means that reserve theater command is over all the reserve engineering unit east of the Mississippi. So that was probably 10,000 or so soldiers, even more. Anyway, so I was there at the 412, and then they said, "Hey, listen, we need a chief of internal review." And I don't know if y'all are familiar with internal reviews, but internal reviews are people like they're like auditors. what they do is they go when somebody has a problem, they'll ask command or they'll send us a request saying, hey, we have a problem at this unit of people not being treated fairly, policies not being followed. So they'll do a request to the internal review section, and then we would go and investigate it if the general wanted us to. And most of the time he did. And we go investigate the complaint and find out if it was legitimate or not, and then we present documentation showing whether all violations occurred, or how they did right, what all they did wrong, what all they could do to fix the problem. Anyway, I was sitting in the internal review, chief of internal review slot, happy with knowing I was going to have to get out because I was an old guy and my time was approaching. And like Colonel Barnes was mentioned, that I not knowing to me, they had already sent my packet up for the board. And so I got passed over the first two times. And I was like, oh, I'm out of here. I'm putting around in. So they came to number 05. When you get to a lieutenant colonel rank, you can get passed over a lot of times so you can get passed over more than twice. And so my commander general, he came to me and said, hey, listen, you need to go find out why you got passed over. Go talk to the deputy commander because he has been on the selection board up at Department of the Army, so he knows what you need to do to fix it if you're going to get selected as a lieutenant, as a colonel. So I said, I'll get my retirement paperwork off.
I think we may have lost him for a second. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So he said that you like Colonel Barnes said, your OER is good. He said it's in the top, but it's not in the top 5. It's good. It's good OER. He said you don't have battalion command, and you had not been deployed. And those guys that you're competing against have been deployed. He said, but you do have the years of experience. You did move up every time you left the command, and then you do have your military education and civilian education. So I'm rocking along, say, okay, all right, I'll fix all that and all my stuff, sit up again. But meanwhile, I'm turning my retirement paperwork. So May of 2015, I was there. No D was June of 2015, in about 2 weeks. And I get an email from the board, selection board, say, hey, listen, you're not going to be put out of the Army in June. We're going to send it to December because there was a mix of the group of people that you were with and selected who would get promoted and who not get promoted. And July 1 of 2015, about 6 weeks later, I get an email saying, hey, listen, you've been picked up on the colonel board and you've been eligible to be promoted to 06. I'm like, what? I went from being retired to promoted. Say, God is good to me. and of course, they did some of the political stuff, but story short is I retired as a full bird colonel July 1 of 2017.
Well, it's always interesting.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it's always interesting to hear that because in the Navy, full bird is captain.
Exactly.
So it's an interesting thing. Mr. Gain, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I'll come back to everyone else, but so now we're kind of in a turbulent time, especially last summer with with racial strife and conflict. So you had the Black Lives Matters movement and things of that nature. And so what I wanted to ask you is, what kinds of answers do you provide for people when they say, well, how can you as a young Black man serve in the military at this point in time, right? Does that question ever come to you? And if it does, what types of answers do you have? And if it hasn't come, let me be the first to ask you, how can you as a young Black man be in the military?
Honestly, at this point in my life, I'm 25, by the way. I'm pretty sure I might look like it. But just to be honest, true to yourself, I have, at least military-wise, I have career goals that are more so which military will get me to those dreams and aspirations. The military is not a means to an I have options. I did not have to join the military. And if that's something that you're willing to pursue, you might as well go for it. And don't let something racial hold you back from chasing what you would like to pursue. Um, that's the best thing. That's the best way I can answer that. I don't know what else to add. I don't know if I'm saying too much or saying too little.
No, and I know that's a difficult question, being that you're still in the military, right? So that, but so that's an interesting question, because I always think back to my father, who, like I said, he was in Vietnam, and so he graduated from high school in '67. So '67 is the same summer they had the Watts riots. Um, '68 they had the riots in Detroit and Chicago. '69, they're trying to have, that's supposed to be the summer of love, but there's still a lot of strife going on, things of that nature, right? He gets out of the military in '72. Well, right around that time is the time they're making a movie about it now, when they go in and shoot Fred Hampton, right? So all of these things are kind of on the air, right? Marvin Gaye, he says when he first gets back to the United States, first song he hears is Marvin Gaye singing "What's Going On." Right. So all those kinds of things were in his purview, and he's trying to figure out, here I am serving the country. How does the country serve me? So I kind of throw that at you. Also, General Barnes, is how did you deal with how did you do the balancing act that we sometimes have to do as Black people in the military, particularly officers, right? Because you are now company, and you're people who are enlisted or non-commissioned officers are saying, look, you're the man, right? So, or the woman, so to speak. So how do you do that balancing act, General Barr?
Well, it wasn't easy because, as we all know, discrimination hurts, sometimes a little bit and sometimes a lot. But after I was born in the South, in Mississippi, and I'm not saying that people in Mississippi are any different than people anywhere else in the world. What I'm saying is that in Mississippi, I knew it faster than anywhere else. A lot of places, they're more sophisticated, I guess you would say, and they cover it better. But I mean, discrimination is discrimination, no matter what kind of manners you use with it. And it's always good to remember who you are, because other people will let you know who you are, especially when you're in places and they are looking around wondering, what are you doing? And you know that by the looks that you get, that they're stereotyping you even before you say anything. So the way I dealt with it was to acknowledge that I am female, I am Black, there's nothing I can do about it, and that the other people that I'm working with will have to deal with it, but that I would do my job the best that I could do it to the best of my ability. And especially when I was in situations where I had to report on myself or my unit, it pushed me to excel more than I ordinarily would have, because I knew that no matter what I did or what I said, just because I was in the room, everybody would know that I was there, that I didn't have to be the one to always ask questions or to always try to draw attention to myself. I could sit there as quiet as a mouse and everybody knew exactly what I was saying, what I was doing, what I didn't say, even down to, I got comments one time about my fingernails in a meeting. Now, what other guy is gonna get comments about their fingernails in a meeting? And to me, that was it was an eye opener that even they were paying attention to that. But I learned from some of the acts of racism, discrimination. I learned from those, and I learned a little bit better how to figure out what was going on. But the bottom line is that sometimes you have to find that space because you can stress out if you focus on it too much, and you have to find a space that because that's an uncomfortable situation that you put yourself in. Mainly, I did that because I wanted to excel. I had set goals. It was something I wanted to do, and I know that the only way to get what I had set my goal for was to be in those uncomfortable situations. But the discomfort made me work harder. But that working hard also stressed me out quite a bit. When I retired from active duty, because the last 8 years of my Army Reserve service were on active duty at Forces Command and then at HRC, I had high blood pressure. After I retired, I didn't have to take high blood pressure medicine anymore. As it's crazy, that was great. But the one other way you deal with it is that you have to have your safe zones. Some people will call them their free black zones, where your church, your family, running was a thing that I did too, and it made me feel freer. I don't run anymore now, I walk. But as I ran, I would think about the things that were stressing me out, and somehow another that running helped me a whole lot. But what I did is I would find my free zones with my friends, family, my sorority sisters, church, that I could be myself and I could relax a little bit.
Okay. Colonel Barnes, I'm going to change the question just a bit for you. So were there times when maybe successes that you had while in the military and things of that nature caused the race thing to fall away? I just, for me, I remember when graduation ceremony, we got a chance to wear our dress whites. I remember walking through the airport, and this was right after 9/11. Everybody was shaking my hand and things of that nature. I was thinking to myself, I guess the real thing I was thinking, I've never been to war, but you had all these older white people thanking me for my service and all of that. So that was an interesting thing. But what are the times and successes maybe that you had, or maybe there was an award that you won or whatever in the military, such that the race thing fell away?
It'll never fall away. Soon, I want to add it. I've heard that question posed in a different way, and I just want to frame it in this way: is how can an African American fight for a country and the country does not love it back? And my dad answered that, not in so many words, but he answered in the fact that this is our country. And I don't need to give everybody a history of African Americans in the military. It started from day one, before the American Revolution. We fought in every war since then. My dad was in World War II. My grandfathers were in World War I. My father was a member of the Red Ball Express, and he has told me stories when he came back from fighting the war. And he was on a train. I think they landed in New York. I mean, on the boat in New York, and they got on a train. And then they got to Kentucky. They asked him to change rail cars and sit in the back. My dad's a different type person. He never finished the story, but I'm sure that there was some bloodshed on that train that day. I don't know this for a fact, but I know that there probably was. But we have to frame the question in a different way, is that America was founded by all of us. I posed this question last night to a young lady, and I'm going to pose it to all of us. And here's a statement. I want everybody to think about this, and I'll answer it. There are no blacks in Africa, and there are no whites in Europe. Mm-hmm. That was something that was manifested itself when America started forming. And America started forming, the first blacks, we generally say it's 1619, but there are others who say and Dr. Neal, I know you're a historian and all this kind of stuff, but others say about 1500, 1519, depending on how you look at it. But at any rate, African Americans have been here all along. Now we have been down because of this separation, but it's a situation now where we need to say we demand a piece of the pie because we have shed blood for this country. There is no question about it that America would not be the way it is financially and in a lot of other aspects because of African Americans, especially the soldiers and the sailors, the Air Force, and Marines who have defended this country all along. I think now that the officers, the black officers in the military, are those have reached higher ranks. As a matter of fact, we got General Austin, who is a former General Austin. He's a Secretary of Defense Austin right now. When we put ourselves in position, African Americans have put ourselves in a position to excel, we have to excel, and we do. How did I do that? My dad always told me he was relatively tall for his day and time. He was 6'2". He says you always have to be the biggest person in the room, and he's not talking about stature. He said if you have to be the biggest person in the room, and you have to be recognized because you're already going to be recognized. So when the spotlight is on you, it's time to shine. And he also told me that you have to prepare. It's not a matter of getting up there and kind of winging stuff. You have to prepare yourself. So I would say to all African American officers, yeah, you have to prepare yourself. I looked up some numbers yesterday just to see how many African Americans or officers were in the military, and it's about 12%, I think it is now. But the number has actually gone down since 2010. That was kind of a surprise to me. But I think preparation is very important. I think that also you have to look forward to say, okay, this is what I can do to get to the next rank. You also have to look back. And what I mean by that is you have to project yourself so that you become a mentor for somebody that's behind you. Some of the proudest moments I've had in the military is not the rank that I attained, but how my unit did, the people that work for me, and also seeing the people that I mentored, seeing them get promoted and seeing them being successful in what they're doing. So yes, it's a tough job, but people are looking at you. And when it is your time to be in the spotlight, you need to shine.
Colonel Sanders, so, when I was training and in the military, whatever, there were a couple of things that I thought that were just kind of, that I had not expected. One of them was the amount of school, right? So for me, being in the Navy was almost like being it was like I was in graduate school twice, because I was in graduate school a lot of the time, and there were just a lot of classes, and I was like, wow, when does this ever end? And it just seemed like there was a number of classes. I don't know about, I've never been general, so I don't know if there's ever a time where they stopped there, but I just know for every rank I had, there was a lot of classes and things of that nature. And then the other thing that I thought was unusual, I guess I never considered the type of person that it takes to be a Navy SEAL, right? And so whenever there was some kind of confusion on base, or fight, right? It was always one of those guys, right? But I never considered, well, what kind of guy does it take to be one of those guys, right? And I didn't know how strong they were, right? And so, so there was always some unusual kinds of things that were going on. What were some of the stranger things that you saw, things that it just shocked you about the military, that you just had no idea that it worked like that, that thing was present in the military?
There's a lot of things I saw, and probably hard to narrow something down, so I'll try to couple a few of them. But first of all, about the education part, I agree with Colonel Barnes. The education part is what got me where I am. I had other races of people that refused to go and get their military education or the civilian education, and then I had to put some of them out, try to help some of them because they refused to go do the things they needed to do, go that extra mile, take that extra pressure, even though it was required of us to make the ranking. They knew way better than I did. So that was one thing. So I say any type of educational opportunity you get, I think, Mr. Gaines, what's your rank in the military?
I am staff sergeant, sir.
Okay, you're staff sergeant, so you're that NCO route. Go and get as much education you can because they're required now that people used to sit in those slots for a long time with their ranks, but now they have to move after so many years, even the enlisted people. So get all that. That's the thing that's going to help you, and is to get that rank, no matter whether they want you to or not. But get that rank anyway. Those are some things. But some of the strange thing I saw in the military was probably some of the attitudes that we had to deal with, and some of that was expected. Like Col Barnes said and General Barnes said, the racism is still there. It never will go away. It's how you deal with it that means it. Because there was a lot of times I prayed about it, and there was some times you asked the question, General Barnes, about how you deal with the if you had like a choice between doing the right thing or making a racial decision, a decision on a racial matter based on your race. And a lot of times I had to pray about it. And I would think about stuff like, well, would Dr. Martin Luther King make this decision, trying to build a race relationship based on I'm doing this because I'm black versus I'm doing this because this is what the policy says I need to do. And there's a lot of times I had to eat my emotions and control my emotions and everything, and basically, hey, listen, the right thing made.
The thing that they would tell us in the military was attention to detail, because I would ask, why in the world are you going to check? They would check all the way down to your eyeglasses on inspection to see if your eyeglasses were clean. And I what is this about? They said, when a man that won't clean his eyeglasses, he's leaving out some other stuff, right? So whatever last word you want to leave us about that you would like people to know about blacks in the military, leave us with that.
Okay. Blacks in the military. The United States is a contradiction. We say that we stand for freedom for all men. In the military, when we go in, we raise our right hand and we swear to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies. Blacks in the military, we love this country. We are just as patriotic as any other race, any other group that's represented in the military. As a matter of fact, I would say that we're more patriotic because as Col Barnes says, that we love our country even when our country has not loved us. We continue to serve. What I would say is the military is a great opportunity for anyone that is willing to go in, but understand that one of the things that you have to do in the military, now everyone doesn't have, no matter what your job, you may be placed in a position where you might have to defend yourself. And you said defend the Constitution, defend the person next to you. You may have to. There's a reason they give you a weapon and learn and teach you how to fire it. So if you think you're in the military and you're never going to go to war, especially in the Army Reserve, that's not true. But the only part in words is that the military has been good to me and my family. My father was military. As a matter of fact, he's buried in Arlington Cemetery. All of his brothers were in the military, and my mother's brothers were all in the military except one. Through World War I and the Korean conflict. We have a family of service, and it's been, when I was in, there were situations that I did not particularly care to be in, but through it all, it helped mold me as a person that I am. And I do appreciate my service. I appreciate those that served with me. And if I had it to do over again, I would do it. But the one thing that the military does teach everyone, not the one thing, but the thing that we're dealing with right now in society, is the military allowed everybody there to vote. There was no voter suppression while you were either on active duty or in the Army Reserve. They always allowed you to vote. They pushed you to vote, and there are special exceptions that's made for even deployed soldiers to vote. So just plug it in there. The municipal elections are coming around in April in Mississippi, and I think that every person that is allowed to vote and eligible to vote should get out and vote. And then the primaries and the general election is in June. So just go out to vote and support soldiers and Marines and airmen and sailors.
Well, on that note, we'll cut it. I really appreciate you guys being a part of this, and just really thank you, and thank you for your service.
Hey, Dr. Neal, can I put a plug in for our military fraternity?
Yes, but we're on time, so we got to keep it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you some more about it, but we have a military fraternity called the Capilano Chi. We'll talk more about it later.
Definitely.
But what the general made me think about it because he said Marines and so on. Anybody that served in the military can be a part of it. Any branch or active duty or reserve, if they're still active duty, they can be a part of it. Capilano Chi is our military fraternity.
Wonderful, wonderful. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Hooah.
Bye-bye.